By the time the cops were dragging her down the porch steps, she was still shrieking about covenant violations. "You can't do this to me. I am the president. I am the law in Birch Hollow." Her cardigan was half off, HOA lanyard flapping like a defeated flag. The whole cul-de-sac watched through blinds and ring cameras while she kicked at the air and tried to twist around to glare at the man standing perfectly still at the top of the steps. My dad. Retired Judge Martin Reyes. He was dressed like someone's soft-spoken grandpa. Faded flannel shirt, old jeans, reading glasses still perched on his nose. The only sign anything was wrong was the thin red mark on his cheek where her acrylic nails had broken skin when she lunged. One of the officers glanced back up. "Sir, you okay?" Dad nodded once. "I've had worse cross-examinations." From the back of the squad car, she snapped with fury in her voice. "Enjoy it while you can, Reyes. You think I forgot what you did? I remember you from court. You ruined my life." Dad adjusted his glasses, looked down at her with that same unshakable, courtroom-neutral expression. "You really should have left it at angry emails, Miss Hulcom," he said quietly. "Judges retire. Video evidence doesn't." Inside, on the hallway table, my laptop screen was still paused on the frame where she'd swung her HOA binder at his head. I didn't grow up in an HOA neighborhood. My dad always said, "I deal with enough rules at work. I'm not paying extra to be told what color my trash cans are allowed to be." Then he retired. He lasted about 6 months in a downtown condo before deciding he wanted grass and birds and a mailbox he could actually walk to. That's how he ended up in Birch Hollow Meadows, a premier covenant community outside Lakefield. The house was modest. Single story, small yard, big shade tree. Exactly what he wanted. My dad's hobbies are reading case law out of habit, growing tomatoes, and being aggressively uninteresting to his neighbors. He told almost no one in the neighborhood what he used to do. If someone asked, he just said he worked in the courts, which people always assumed meant clerk, or maybe some kind of administrator. Enter Cassandra Hulcom. Cassie, as she insisted everyone call her. Birch Hollow HOA president, full-time menace, and human cease and desist letter in capri pants. Cassie had the kind of blonde bob that looked weaponized and a voice like a car alarm with opinions. She carried a clipboard at all times, like she was afraid spontaneity might break out if she let go. At their first interaction, she showed up at Dad's front door with a smile that didn't touch her eyes. "Welcome to Birch Hollow Meadows," she chirped with forced cheerfulness. "I'm Cassie, your HOA president. I just wanted to go over a few little items with you." My dad, being polite to a fault, invited her in. She immediately criticized his non-conforming doormat. "We prefer neutral text, no jokes," she said with a disapproving tone. Then the color of his bird feeder. "Red can attract undesirables," she added with suspicion in her voice. "And the height of his mailbox grass. We have standards here, Mr. Reyes," he said. "Martin Reyes." For half a second, she froze. Just a flicker, like a glitch in a video game. Then she recovered, smiled wider, and continued. "Reyes. Right. Well, welcome aboard." He chalked it up to him, misreading her expression. I didn't. Because 2 days later, when I came by with takeout, I saw her sitting in an SUV parked halfway down the street, staring at our house like it owed her money. The violations started small. A yellow slip on the door. "Please remove unapproved garden ornament, ceramic owl, not in community style guide." Then another notice. Wind chimes exceed acceptable sound levels. The wind chime was a tiny copper thing that made less noise than my dad's knees. Dad shrugged and complied. Lowered the chime, moved the owl. "Pick your battles," he told me. Cassie escalated. He got cited for excessive foliage. 3 tomato plants. Then unreported flag display. A small Filipino flag in his office window. Then trash can visibility. He'd brought them in 20 minutes late on pickup day. Every time, he'd respond calmly, point out the bylaws, attach photos. Every time, she'd dig in harder. Then came the gossip. Neighbors started hinting. She says you used to be some kind of lawyer, one older guy across the street told him with concern, like it was a felony. She said you probably think you're above the rules, another woman whispered to me near the mailboxes with judgment in her voice. Cassie started holding informal chats at the clubhouse about certain residents who don't respect our community standards. Never naming Dad, but describing him so specifically she might as well have put his photo on the PowerPoint. Then one afternoon, I walked into Dad's kitchen and interrupted him in the middle of watching a local news clip from 6 years ago. On the screen, a grainy courthouse shot. His younger self in a robe, being interviewed. The caption read, Judge Reyes sentences local woman in insurance fraud and DUI case. The local woman was Cassandra Hulcom. Same eyes. Same jaw. Same barely contained fury. Dad paused the video. Well, he said softly. That clarifies a few things. Turned out, she'd faked an injury for an insurance payout, got busted driving drunk with her kid in the car, then tried to lie about both on the stand. Dad had given her a relatively light sentence. Probation, restitution, mandatory treatment, and a strongly worded lecture that made the news. She cried for most of it, he said, not unkindly. But she wasn't sorry for what she did. She was sorry she got caught. We just didn't know how long she could hold a grudge. If before she'd been petty, now she went full campaign. She started showing up on Dad's property line with a measuring tape. This shrub is 2 inches over maximum height, she'd announce with authority. This hose is visible from the street when not in use, she'd declare triumphantly. This shade of white trim isn't the approved Arctic mist, it's clearly frosted linen, she'd insist with fake expertise. She began emailing the HOA list vague warnings. Some residents with questionable ethical pasts have moved in. Please remember, no one is above our covenants. She copied the board on every violation she sent him. She started adding weird comments. I know what kind of man you are. You can't hide behind a robe now. Karma always comes around. Then she crossed the line from annoying to dangerous. First, she filed a complaint with the State Judicial Conduct Commission about my dad, who was already retired, accusing him of sentencing bias, personal vendettas, and destroying families. She attached printouts of his old cases, cherry-picked and spliced. They sent back a politely baffled letter saying, essentially, Ma'am, he doesn't even work here anymore. Not satisfied, she went nuclear in HOA terms. She used HOA funds to hire a private investigator to look into his past. She wrote an anonymous letter to neighbors claiming he'd targeted single mothers and ruined lives for fun. She started showing up at his door unannounced, pounding on it and demanding he admit what he did, her voice shrill with rage. Dad stayed calm. He did what he'd done for 30 years. Document, document, document. He saved every email. He printed every notice. He recorded every interaction in a neat little notebook. We also installed a doorbell camera. The day she attacked him, it was barely noon. She stormed up the walkway, HOA badge swinging, binder in hand. You can see the whole thing on the footage. She mashes the doorbell like it owes her dues. Dad opens the door halfway. Miss Hulcom, he says, voice even. Is there a problem? There's a big problem, she snaps, thrusting her phone in his face with barely controlled fury. On the screen is that old news clip with his face and her name in the caption. You think I wouldn't find out? You think you can just retire and hide among us like some wolf in cardigans? He just blinks. I wasn't hiding. I'm retired, not in witness protection. She gasps like he's confessed to murder. You humiliated me in that courtroom, she screams. You destroyed my reputation. You ruined my chance at a normal life. And now you move into my community. She jabs his chest with her binder, her voice rising to a shriek. I run things here. Not you. Miss Hulcom, I didn't ruin your life, he says quietly. You committed 3 felonies and a DUI with a minor in the car. That's when she loses it. On camera, in HD, she swings the binder at his head. He ducks. She rakes his cheek with her nails, grabs his shirt, and tries to shove him backward into the house. You don't get to judge me twice, she shrieks with wild fury. What she gets instead is my voice off camera. Hey! I just arrived, saw the scene, and stepped between them. She turns on me, wild-eyed, before realizing every neighbor on the street is now watching. And the little blue doorbell light is still glowing. I hold up my phone. Congratulations, Cassie. You just assaulted a retired judge on camera. Her face drains, then flushes. No one will believe you, she hisses desperately. This community knows me. They respect me. You're just... There's a siren in the distance. Dad sighs. I didn't call them, he says calmly. Your screaming triggered 3 different neighbors' disturbance alerts. Someone beat us to it. For the first time since she stepped onto the porch, Cassie looks unsure. Threatening a random homeowner is one thing. Attacking a former judicial officer in his doorway is not smart. The responding officers take one look at Dad's cheek, the video, and her shaking hands gripping that binder like a weapon, and their posture shifts. Ma'am, turn around. Hands behind your back. You can't arrest me, she snaps with indignation. I'm the HOA president. I have a meeting in 20 minutes. You can reschedule, the officer says dryly, snapping on cuffs. They put her in the car pending investigation for assault and intimidation of a former judicial officer, which is apparently not a charge you want to test drive. But the real shift happens over the next few weeks. An investigator from the county prosecutor's office shows up. Then someone from the state's Judicial Protection Unit. They are extremely interested in the threatening emails, the complaint she filed with false statements, and her use of HOA funds to hire a PI to dig up dirt on a judge who once sentenced her. They widen the lens, so to speak. They request HOA financials. They interview board members. They grab copies of newsletters and emails where she's been hinting about corrupt officials living among us. The board, which had been happily letting her run the show in exchange for not being bothered about their lawn edges, suddenly realizes they might be legally attached to this sinking ship. At the next emergency HOA meeting, without Cassie, she's out on bail and advised by counsel not to attend. The treasurer clears his throat and reads off some numbers. So, it seems President Hulcom approved several expenditures without board votes, he says, sweating. Including a background investigation on Mr. Reyes. Charged to community safety. The room murmurs with concern. A board member who'd been her little lieutenant pipes up weakly, Well, we thought. You thought nothing, the treasurer snaps. We're all on the hook for this. Personally. The prosecutor's office wants to know why we allowed HOA funds to be used to stalk a retired judge. For the first time, my dad becomes Mr. Reyes the neighbor and not that guy Cassie hates. People glance at him with a mix of guilt and fear. He sits with his hands folded, utterly calm, while the board votes to suspend Cassie as president pending legal outcomes. The motion passes unanimously. Cassie doesn't go quietly. Her lawyer manages to get her charges consolidated, but the prosecutor adds a few she really doesn't like. Assault. Harassment. Retaliation against a judicial officer, even retired. Misuse of HOA funds. Every time she opens her mouth in court, she makes it worse. The judge, a stone-faced woman with absolutely no patience for theatrics, warns her twice about outbursts. You don't understand, Cassie insists, voice trembling with righteous indignation. He made an example of me. He ruined my chances. And then he moves in next door and just pretends nothing happened? That's psychological warfare. The judge peers over her glasses. Miss Hulcom, are you seriously arguing that your victim living his life is a crime against you? The courtroom titters. Her gaze flicks to my dad sitting on the bench in the gallery. She wants to point, scream, relitigate 2019. This is the sequel she's been writing in her head for years. She doesn't get it. Because before sentencing, the judge says, Mr. Reyes, you were the original sentencing judge in Miss Hulcom's prior case, correct? Yes, Your Honor, my dad says, rising. You have any desire to be heard today? He smiles faintly. Only to say I bear Miss Hulcom no personal animosity. I sentenced the conduct, not the person. I had hoped she'd use that mercy to move on. Clearly, she did not. Cassie scoffs with contempt. Mercy? You called me a danger to society on TV. Dad nods. I stand by that assessment. The judge bangs her gavel. That's enough. Then she turns to my dad. Given your prior involvement, Mr. Reyes, I assume you'd prefer I handle this instead of you? He inclines his head. I'm quite content to be a civilian on this one, Your Honor. And that's what kills Cassie a little. She doesn't even get the showdown she wanted. He's not up there on the podium anymore. He's just another neighbor watching her meltdown. The judge sentences her to 6 months in jail, 18 months probation, mandatory anger management and mental health treatment, full restitution to the HOA for misused funds totaling $12,000, and a 10-year court-ordered prohibition from serving on any HOA or community board. The cherry on top? Part of her restitution is earmarked for independent governance training for Birch Hollow Meadows HOA board. Translation: the HOA has to go to classes because of her. She turns to look at the gallery as the bailiff approaches. Her eyes find my dad. This isn't over, she whispers with desperation. It is, he says calmly. That's literally what sentencing is. The bailiff steps forward and Cassie's face crumples completely as the reality finally hits her. 6 months in jail. $12,000. 10 years ban from ever holding power in an HOA again. Everything she built, every bit of petty authority she wielded, gone in a single gavel strike. She opens her mouth one last time as if to protest, but nothing comes out except a choked sob as she's led away from the courtroom.